conversation. So I'm a bit tired. I've had too much time in the sun, so I'm coming down to earth. I'm joining us again. James, how are you? How are you?
Yeah, I'm very, very well, thank you, Tom, and it's good to be back again. I'm really
Great. I
excited.
I love these conversations, James. They're so precious.
Mm,
A chance to just talk about our faith and where we've got to in ours. And it's so lovely hearing your side, something
mm,
of your story, your perspective. That's, some bits are similar to mine, some bits are different.
mm,
I really have appreciated that. Um, so we were talking before about what to talk about today,
mhm.
and we kind of thought about, we ended on oppression last
Yeah.
time. So we were thinking about power and oppression. Um, and then I just came up with the idea of hurt and kind of
Mm,
spiritual hurt, how that, and they all kind of come in together, don't they?
mhm.
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to kick us off with those ideas, James?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about power till the cows come home, really. But spiritual hurt, I really liked when you were saying about that. Just like on a personal level, I've experienced that in my own life and in various ways, and it's different from other forms of hurt because I think it kind of, what's the word? It permeates. It permeates like a lot of places that you don't expect. Like you'll feel it in like your emotions as well as like maybe physically and probably um, you know sort of intellectually. You sort of like start seeing questioning yourself. Like so psychologically, you might start to doubt yourself. With it. So just to go on my own experience, I used to be part of a community project, and it's an amazing initiative, an amazing project, and it's still going now, thankfully. Um, but I reached a point there where I was completely burnt out, not just emotionally but spiritually as well, because I was in a place where I suppose that the expectation on me was quite high, and I think that can happen for a lot of people who are working uh, in areas of spirituality or like areas of spiritual. I don't want to say authority, but there is an element of that, or you've got like a position of leadership maybe. So that's sort of cap captures what I was doing. I was sort of like a live-in support, live-in sort of yeah person to look after the house and look after the people who were there living in it. Um, and it took its toll on me in a number of ways. Initially, there was like enough people who were supporting and engaging in a positive way that it that the impact on me was negligible or small enough for me to manage and manage well, like through other things, so like friendship and making sure I was looking after myself in various ways, that sort of stuff, time out and whatnot. But as time wore on, gradually those people would do like a time, maybe like a year, 2 years, something like that. But gradually would like either move away from where I was living, or move out of the house, or go on to do different things. All sorts of different reasons. Not necessarily bad reasons, or not necessarily like unreasonable uh, sort of conditions to moving out. But and so over time, I was in a position where there were more and more people to support, and fewer people supporting. Um, and as a result, emotionally, I was quite drained,
Mm.
but also spiritually, I felt completely wiped out, completely burnt out, and not really able to connect to God or pray in a way that I felt connected, and as a result, my like, and it was definitely, it was on my part a sense of spiritual disconnection and spirit, and that would be what I would term it as spiritual hurt, is the spiritual disconnection from that, then permeates everything else. So then I'm really unable to engage with people emotionally. My finances like took a massive hit. That was sort of like not necessarily linked to the fact that it was a spiritual issue, but certainly like living there, I wasn't able um, to have an income that was sustaining the way I was living. Um, Physically, I just felt drained and tired continually. So there was like, yeah, so on a like a non-spiritual point of view, or if you like, people would just say, "Oh yeah, he's burnt out," and yes, of course that was the case, but the underlying reason was a spiritual element. Coupled with that, there was then a whole lot of turmoil that went on in the church I was attending. Again, linked to it was linked to the greenhouse, although that turmoil was as a direct result of what was happening. But then that like just went on to exacerbate everything that I was in, if you like, um, and that realization that hang on a sec, the organization that I'm affiliated with or aligned with here does not in any way reflect where I'm at spiritually, um, and that feeling of, oh, I'm maybe either on my own, and maybe not, don't believe the same thing that all of these people around me believe or profess to believe. So maybe I'm not in the right place physically, geographically. Um, so I ended up in a position where I was questioning basically everything, and I suppose that sort of was a big catalyst for me deconstructing everything. I was already on that path to deconstruction, if you like. I was already very like questioning of everything and very sort of skeptical, I think, of like the traditional way of doing things in churches. So I was then became more and more so, to the point where I realised, oh, actually, I can't really go here. I can't really be a part of what's going on here, with integrity, and be authentic, in that. So I don't know if any of that makes sense. That's quite a lot of information for you there, Tom. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's basically
Well,
where,
I'll do my best, James.
yeah.
Yeah. So it, like, I could really feel the reasons for the kind of breakdown, like
Mm,
the emotional
yeah,
pressures and load on you, in
yeah,
that, and it, like, I really got that sense of, more load and less people to carry it,
yes,
and less people kind of supporting you in it as well.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so there was that real, like, wow, that's a lot, like that's
mm,
and it kind of really makes sense, um, how it links with kind of finances and spirituality, um,
mm,
and yet, like, it's the other way as well, that, and I think this is what you were saying, was how that spiritual disconnection was kind of, it felt like the worst of it all, um,
yes, yeah,
that
yeah,
all this was going on, but actually the worst of it, or like, what completely made it empty, was that spiritual disconnection.
yeah,
And then I was really interested that how that was, like, so interwoven with this disconnect from your church life, and
mm,
from, like, like, there was this kind of double disconnect of,
yeah, yeah,
um disconnect from God, or spirit, or whatever you want to call it, and disconnect from this spiritual community where you'd had your home.
yes,
um
yeah, yeah. Like a breakdown in every direction. Uh,
yeah, and a real breakdown, real kind of fissures
Mm.
there, kind
Yeah,
of.
yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And
Um,
it was just when you were saying that, remind me that um, I sort of a lot of the phrases that you'd hear in church or that I would hear in church would be things like, you've just got to have faith. You've got, it's about sacrifice and service, and it's about, um, a lot of words that and phrases that kind of tap into the spiritual side of things, tap into an emotional place of, um, you know, sense of duty, sense of responsibility,
mm,
and expectation on all of this sort of layers and layers of burden that can then become
yeah.
really, really troublesome. Um,
Especially when you've already got all those layers of burden.
yeah,
In
and if you're carrying
like,
that from like
yeah,
childhood, which certainly I
yeah,
am, and have been
yeah,
doing work on for various reasons and all sorts, and it just kind of becomes really cyclical, and you feel like you're you're burning out because you don't have enough faith, and you're not doing enough, or you're not like praying enough, reading your Bible enough, meditating enough, all of these things that really should be like just or can be just a an ease or a joy or something that is part of your everyday life rather than like oh, I must do this, I must do that. um,
yeah.
and we end up in I ended up in a real um, a real mess with it all, to be honest. So probably not the only one, in fact certainly not the only one.
Mm,
um, but
mm,
it did have it's completely changed the way I look at faith. It completely changed the way I look at the Bible, how I look at prayer, how I do pray, um, how I meditate, when I meditate, and how I view church, and what church means to me. So
mm,
yes, it's
mm.
I think we yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and there was, yeah, like it's almost that emotional experience
Mm.
led to that real, I guess, awakening almost. It feels like of I can't relate with this organized church that I'm in. Like I
Yes, yeah,
and still hold it on to myself.
yeah.
Um, and I was curious about that idea of burden and
Mm.
um, and how a few things kind of sparked off there of how churches or organized spiritual communities can be against can say being against burden.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and actually, it's very helpful if they've got people who take burdens on themselves.
yeah,
Kind of that's their way of being. It's very helpful because that's how the church functions with
yeah, yeah,
such
yeah, yeah.
people. Like all the stuff churches do, it
Yeah.
needs people who will take on
We'll
burdens
take on responsibilities
or
and
take
stuff.
on responsibilities. Yeah.
And there was always like a sort of semi tongue in cheek, but more with increasing levels of resentment, a recognition that there were about of the people who were in the church. You've got about 10% of those people are the ones who do everything,
Yeah.
who do 90% of
Yeah.
the tasks or the things that are required. And
And
I'm sure that that's across the board with churches.
yeah, and
Yeah,
a little bit tongue in cheek back
yeah,
is they probably love it.
yeah, yeah,
Like that it's not coincidence that they find themselves in that place.
yeah. That's it.
Um, and I say that kind of knowing how much I go into that place as well. Like
Yeah,
that's part of my story is do what be responsible, take on but like take on do do your duty. Um and it's so easy. Like I'm now um you know, I'm not in a place where I'm heavily involved in a church because we've kept moving, which has been wonderful because I'm now in a place of having two kids. And if I had two kids and I was heavily involved in a church,
yeah,
and I know like this is a common story, like I would be heading for a breakdown. Like that's the
yeah,
road. But
yeah,
you kind of think, oh, this is what I should do. This is, and like you plow on as well because that's
Yeah.
your duty. You just got to have more
Sense-
faith, and all these like esteem of those that serve as well. Like they do something for you because that's how you
Yeah,
found your place in the
yeah,
world.
yeah.
That's what, I don't know, was allowed in your family or whatever. So
Mm,
I say it tongue in cheek, and I think it's so important. Like it's really people's lives that they find themselves in this place,
mm.
and they keep going, and it can easily
Destroy. Yeah.
it can easily
Or
destroy it, and it destroys what's at the heart, I think, and that's maybe what you experienced, that it.
and it's interesting because it's no one phrase or no one comment that
Mm,
makes you reluctant to rest or makes you reluctant to step back or take a break, but it's just a myriad little, yeah,
mm,
looks or phrases or comments here and there that make you think, oh, I really can't because I don't. There's just a sense of judgment
yeah,
on people who aren't doing, who are stopping.
yeah,
And yet,
yeah,
the whole way through, there's this narrative of, you know, um, in the story of Adam and Eve and the creation story, God created the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day, he rested. And that is the first day for people.
mm,
So we start from a place of God's rest, and this whole narrative of rest, of Jesus says, "My burden is light, my yoke is easy," or the other way around. I always get it wrong. And all of this sense that we're that we're being called to a place of rest and are called away from a place of working and striving and doing, in the words that we hear and the sermons that we hear, sometimes, not always, sometimes it's
mm,
completely the opposite. Um, but in the practice, it's the opposite. And I think that's where I think a lot of spiritual hurt maybe occurs, is because you're hearing and being told one story, and then you're seeing and you're being encouraged to practice another.
mm,
And again, it comes back to that fear and love, and
yeah,
the fear is that if we stop, then what will happen? What if we stop? What if I
yeah,
don't do this? Will God be angry with me? Will people be disappointed in me? Will God be disappointed in me? Will the church still function? Will the church still have enough money? If I don't keep sacrificing and keep serving, what will happen to these people? Will I be letting them down?
yeah,
Um, will the church roof fall off? Probably. All of these different things that kind of
mm,
you know aren't necessarily verbalized or vocalized, but they are there in the background as background hum of fear, of like a background, yeah, a background miasma, and that's the I think I think for me where I see spiritual hurt arise from, certainly for in me and for in my own story, that's where things have happened. And I
mm,
think probably for a lot of other people, I'm probably not alone in that. um, yeah. So and I think that's why I really really struggle with the when we were talking last week about the Wesleyan quadrilateral. I really struggle with scripture and tradition being so revered as the center points for people's faith, because to me they are just um, perpetuators in this cycle. They don't give anything else, and I say that knowing that like my brain's already arguing back against me, going, no, that's not always true, James. That's a massive generalization. I know, but that's a big part of why I struggle with it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I really feel that. Um, it's almost like it's almost like kind of in the there's this house of love, but there's this constant fear that you might be chucked out.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's like, oh, we go to our, I don't know, services, and it's great. We see people, we get preached lovely stuff, and we sing, and it's great. But like on the implicit level, there's that there's that possibility of being chucked out.
yeah. Or not quite fitting, or not
Or
quite
not.
being good
Yeah,
enough, or not quite, you know, not doing enough to
yeah,
serve. It's called a service and so on.
yeah.
So
And that that just makes it not a house of love, doesn't it?
yeah,
Just makes it a house of fear.
it's a
Um,
house of fear. Yeah, fear of not being, not doing enough.
yeah,
Um,
and it makes it so. Sorry, James.
no, no, you
So
can't. No.
so tricky to put your finger on, like you're saying,
Yeah,
like it's a whole load of little bits,
very
and
subtle.
it's very subtle, and
Mm.
so it's very difficult to know that you're in it, I think.
Yeah.
And I think I'm hearing that in your story, but I'm definitely here. I definitely can look back at my own story and
Mm.
see, oh, I was in there. And I'm also very aware that I bring my own stuff into that equation,
Yeah,
um, where I take looks and I take words to mean a certain thing as
yeah,
well, and
yeah,
it's there is that tension there, isn't there?
yeah,
But I do think it's a big, at least a big, um, a, a big problem, or at least a big possibility, danger, in churches. That yeah, it's almost, I don't know. It so wrecks us. It so like contorts our head, and our like it kind of pulls us both in both directions of fear and love at the same time, and it kind of masks itself therefore, because it's like, oh no, it's all loving, but underneath there's this urchin kind of
yeah, yeah.
um that's there. Sorry, I'm babbling now,
I
James.
love it. No,
What
you're
were you?
not at all. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I was loving it. Yeah, yeah,
um yeah, because I can see in my life, like I fitted in really well, and it was really seeing the hurt on other people that
mm,
made me realized maybe how much it's hurting me, or how something really quite wrong was happening,
yeah,
and then being able to trust or lean into my own, i guess thinking and feelings around this,
yeah, yeah.
so that I could feel. And once I realized that, once it was almost like somebody um somebody said the word hurt, and it was like, once I realized that, I was like, it was like a big relief almost. It was like, oh yeah, that's what I've been holding in
That's
me.
what I'm feeling. It is,
Yeah,
isn't it?
it is
That's
hurt.
what
Oh
that,
yeah.
that is. Yeah,
And then it is releasing, isn't it? Because then it gives you permission to feel hurt and
acknowledge it.
acknowledge it, and then the anger that's kind of protecting and that's kind of
Yeah,
working out something else, and the energy
mm,
needed to do something different
yeah,
can then happen.
exactly.
And I guess that's maybe where I'm getting to. Maybe what I'm feeling earlier was that difference between the explicit and the implicit, almost, or that, like, you're in the house of love,
Mm,
but there's that fear element as well, like that stops us recognizing
yeah, doesn't
how
allow
that
us to go
feeling.
there. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it might be a really loving church, and it's just one hurtful act, or it's one
Yeah.
hurtful thing, or it's just how things have conspired. But if we don't feel the hurt, because everything must be great and everybody, we're in this loving church, then
Mm,
if we don't feel it, we can't change anything. We're
yeah.
just stuck holding it, aren't we?
Mm. And it's it's really challenging. I'm sure that the majority of church leaders, and I know that church leaders who I've encountered at the church that I used to be a part of, and variously throughout my faith, just that they encounter this and they want to make things different or do things differently or do things in a way that people can express their hurt, and it can be an open and honest and a place where people can be authentic. And I don't know why it can't, or I haven't seen it. Do you know what I mean? Or it will last for a time, even in a small group I used to belong to. It really did last for quite a while, where it did feel authentic. It did feel like we were able to. Everybody was bringing. Everybody was able to share openly and honestly, and there was a sense of community there that I didn't feel in church, but I did feel in the small group, and I suppose that's sort of the purpose. But it lasted up until a point, and then when everything started to go to rack and ruin around, it also impacted there, and so there was also a sense that it wasn't immune.
Yeah.
I don't know, and so I suppose part of me wonders: is the iteration of church that we see nowadays, is it a temporary thing, and are all iterations of church temporary, and we see it change and evolve and grow, and we need to allow it to do that? When we try to prevent it from changing and evolving and growing, we're then stifling and creating fertile ground for that house of fear to grow, and there needs to be a space for us just to go, okay, this is great, this has worked really well. Have we reached the end? Have we reached the end of this? And is there something new, something different? I don't know, and I think that's the first time I've kind of vocalized that. There's always been a part of me that we talk about, or I've talked to friends and people who've been in churches before about what does church look like, and what does perfect church or ideal church, maybe rather than perfect church, look like to them. And every time there's sort of a similarity to what we do already. And I wonder why that is. Because maybe there's good in all of it, but maybe, I don't know, maybe there's a different way of doing things that does look completely different. I don't know. Yeah, it's very sort of, it feels like to me that there is a different way to experience spirituality together that doesn't look like what's gone before, that is different, that is new. I don't know what that looks like, because obviously we haven't got a pattern, we haven't got a model. Maybe it's not possible. I don't know. I would love to think that it is possible, because there is a part of me that craves spiritual community. That craves spiritual community on a I think on a small scale, not on, I see mega churches, and I know that we've got mega churches and have mega churches in this country, as well as the States is renowned for them and that sort of thing. And that it must be incredible. There must be a reason for it, but it's not what attracts me. It's not what the heart in me goes, that feels like home. Do you know? And I think that is maybe part of what it is. It's a sense of home, or a sense of deep community, where you know that the people who you're speaking to and relating to, however hurt, however damaged or resentful or unsure or uncertain or doubtful, that ultimately they're wanting to love and love a bit more, and learn to love a bit more. Uh, yeah, sounds quite idealistic, but that's basically where I'm at with what does church look like, and even there, I don't know if you'd be if that would prevent any spiritual hurt. I'm sure that would be a fine space for spiritual hurt to occur as well. I don't know. Yeah.
I'm just so deeply struck by that, James. I just like it really felt like an articulation of something that's some deep
Mm.
feeling in you that
Yeah.
um and at the same time resonated with the stuff going on in me, I think. um
Mm.
well, I don't think I feel and I know, and I don't have an answer. Like I don't,
Yeah.
and I think um yeah, because there's something about authority that protects,
Yeah.
um and I also see why you hate. You know, it's very clear now why you hate authority in scripture being right at the bottom, because that's not allowing it. I really see that openness for almost like an explosion of possibility of why why can't church look like this, or spiritual communities look like this. Um and I think at the end there, like you were it felt you were touching on a fear I have of, any spiritual community could be hurtful.
Mm.
um and you know, the more successful it is in whatever way you define that success, the more
Yeah.
potential for hurt there is.
Mm.
And yet I crave that. I can't remember the sentence you said, but you just struck it completely of um being, or kind of being spiritual together
Mm.
and just trying to love each other a bit better.
Mm.
um like it was so powerful as a, like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's possible in churches as they are now.
Mm.
I don't know. And I don't know how you then, maybe that's something so fragile that it's very difficult to make it immune.
Yeah. Yeah.
um and maybe the fragility makes it even more beautiful when
Yeah.
it's found.
I think you're right. I think there is something to do.
But I don't want to hold off. I want to cling to that hope that it's possible as well.
Yeah.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah. It feels
Because
like a good thing.
it's powerful, isn't it? Like
Mm.
that's the essence of the power of spirituality, I think. And so maybe something so powerful can or is able to withstand, able, like, immune in some way.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I would hope so. I would hope that it would be a place where anyone can say anything, and it would be accepted and discussed and held with the same reverence, regardless of who said it.
mm,
Um,
mm,
and that there would be like a sense of acceptance and yeah, acceptance and belonging for everyone. That it almost feels like, if it did exist, if this sort of idea would work, that you'd have whoever would be attending or whoever would be there um, would feel comfortable hosting it, and
mm,
anybody who was there would feel comfortable hosting for whatever reason, and so that there would be like a sense of shared, not, I was going to say responsibility, but shared ownership almost, or shared, like, hospitality, that nobody is um, no one feels sort of put upon, or if they do, they're able to say.
Mm. Mm.
I'm not sure. I think I'm getting a little bit too specific with it. It feels more comfortable when it's a bit more of an idea and less of a oh, hang on a sec, maybe this is possible and we've just been missing it. You know, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel both those fears, both like that hope and that wanting to make it, and also fear of, have I just missed it? And is it like, is it me? um,
Right. Right. Yeah.
maybe that's in there as well. Yeah, um, yeah. I think we leave it there, James. Partly because I feel like I'm at the boundary of where I'm at
Yeah.
almost,
I
and
totally am.
yeah,
Everything I'm saying, I'm
yeah,
just feeling around in the dark at the moment. I just
yeah,
yeah,
which is great, and I love, like, this is where I want to be.
yeah.
I think, and that these conversations is where I want to be, having these conversations of um, where it's going to stretch me, where it's going to kind of be feeding out those feeding out and trying to put words to those bits that I'm my frontiers, I guess. Um, yeah. So thank you very much, James. Is there anything you want to finish with?
Um, Only that if anybody's listening to this and starts something, let me know.
Yeah.
I would love to be involved, or I'd love to know how it happens, and
Yeah.
yeah, and just that people can be welcomed wherever. That'd be lovely. Lovely to know about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that. Thank you, James.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank you, those that listen back. We've really enjoyed it, and we hope to see you another week.
Definitely.
Bye for now.